just in time, we've got the Safaricom results out, and most market participants waiting for these numbers to be released. So the market closed prior to these numbers released. Just taking you through these numbers, revenue increased to 47.1 billion shillings, and that's up around 15%. Just squizzing through these numbers because they were out just a short while ago. What sense are you making of them?
Well, like we mentioned before, it was bound to happen. Safaricom was sure enough to have an increase in terms of their profits. In terms of the duration that they've operated, we've noticed the 3G network in terms of acquiring WiMAX, in terms of voice data, and with the whole price war that just began in August, it did not have a very big dent as far as would look at it from the reports that were given. And then going by the way the reports, the results have been released, we've actually noticed it just towards the end of closing of business today. But going forward, like most analysts have predicted, it may not be as easy going forward in terms of being able to generate that amount of profit, because Zain is actually being very, very aggressive. Orange has been very aggressive, both in voice and in data. So it's going to be more or less a question of innovation, and also at the end of the day is how to woo in more and more consumers and to retain them. The key thing now will be retention as opposed to just focusing only on expansion.
Well, Waiyaki, it's quite interesting looking at these headlines. We have noticed, of course, that average revenue per user seems to be coming in better than expected for data. Do you think that Safaricom can sustain these kind of ARPUs, and do you think that perhaps it'll increase down the line, because most people are expecting them to really focus on the data offering going forward?
Well, yes, I do believe so, because if you look at even some slide surveys, they show that they will have more than 1 million plus users on data by 2012. And then if you go by what they've been doing, like now they've dropped or rather slashed prices to about 133%, whereby you find usage in terms of downloading usage is actually very cheap right now for most of the post-pay users. And when you look at from the point of view of data usage as opposed to voice, you notice that the data usage has more or less leaning towards postpaid customers as opposed to prepaid, and they've actually focused on that. And by the price reductions, you notice that that's one of their strategies. And yes, data, as we mentioned, is going to be one of the biggest fronts. And with the entry of MTN in terms of being in the market, it's going to be a bit more competitive for all going round.
EBITDA margins, though, down 2.8% to 40%. Your view on that, because we know margins are going to be squeezed going forward, and of course with the new CEO, Bob Collymore, a lot of concern in terms of what he's going to bring to the table next, because Safaricom has been known to be relatively innovative. The question is that can they sustain that upward momentum when it comes to product offering?
Well, I tend to believe that they can, because going by past history, and also we can attribute it to the previous CEO, Michael Joseph, and the team that he worked with. But going by past history, we notice that innovation has been one of the key things that has helped them, and then also coming to market way before to deal with any eventualities that may happen after you've released the product. And that might also help them going forward. But also what you have going for them has always been loyalty. They've had a sustained loyalty as far as their customer base is concerned. And this is also like what I mentioned, they build on mostly with a lot of loyalty reward programs that will keep users, or rather mobile phone users, longer within Safaricom, as opposed to you may have an alternative line, but you still end up average revenue per user will be higher as far as Safaricom is concerned.
Yeah. What is your view in terms of the stock? How do you think Safaricom is going to respond to these numbers? Do you think investors are going to perhaps put a bullish spell on Safaricom over the next couple of weeks?
Well, for sure, that has been the trend. We notice that it's been between 4 shillings and 50, 4 shillings and 80. We may notice it might reach a peak of maybe 5 shillings and 25 or 5 shillings and 10, given the duration. But going by it, this has actually shown a lot of investors that there's still a lot of fight coming from Safaricom. There's still benefits that are coming from it, and it's still a business that should not be written off by the mere fact that there's been price wars. Because if you notice, the price wars have just been one part of their business, that's voice data. Yeah. And you look at data and all round what is being added on, when you call value-added services, it still is a viable company, and it still is one of the companies to watch going forward as the economy grows.
Well, Waiyaki, it's quite interesting because what you're saying is basically shared by most of the investors that I've chatted to, of course, the local investors. Why do you think that Safaricom share price has been under so much pressure? I mean, we're sitting at around 480 shillings. We know that there's a lot of foreign interest. Why do you think it hasn't rallied significantly? Because clearly market forces have ensured that a lot of the bad news has been priced in.
Well, you have to look at it in the sphere of other counters that are trading, and going by that, it's not the only counter, but it's mostly heavily traded. If you look at going by day-to-day reports, like a weekly report, you notice there are certain instances where the share price actually reaches about 5 shillings, 5.25, and then comes down. This is all less to do with the active trading. Yes, foreign investors have still been interested in it, but that's not the only portfolio that they're looking at now. There's much more in store in terms of the stock exchange to not just focus on one counter only. So meaning if you're coming in as a foreign investor, you're looking at your portfolio, building your portfolio where you have telecommunications, you look at companies that are involved in financial services, you look at those that are involved in infrastructure, so you spread yourself accordingly, and that would be one of the reasons why we are not seeing that much rally in terms of everybody just focusing on that counter.